gang, did you know that being quote unquote thirsty sometimes has nothing to do with water? Did you know that the noodle emoji might not mean spaghetti? Do you know what breadcrumbing, ghosting, and bussin' means? Well, our guest does, because she lives at the intersection of parenting and tech and has for her whole career. She also knows that you might feel a little lost when it comes to technology in your home, and she's here to help. Got to warn you, she doesn't bite, but she does bark. Please welcome to the RO Podcast, Chief Marketing Officer and Chief Parent Officer at Bark, Titania Jordan. Titania, welcome to the RO Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Best intro ever.
You know, that's what I aim for. That's it. And we could just shut down. Let's just say thank
Nailed
you
it.
everybody for joining. I couldn't tell, Titania, actually, and as I'm watching, I couldn't tell if your hand in your face was amusement or embarrassment or just a little bit of both.
Probably both.
A little bit of both, sure. Well, I can promise you this. My 13-year-old daughter, who I hope listens, is mortified right now. Just,
Yep.
I mean, absolutely mortified hearing me say breadcrumbing, ghosting, and bussing.
No cap.
No cap. Well, I'm just glad to hear that was not like a mid intro. That's another one that I'm learning here.
This is great.
So, how old is your son? Your son, I mean, how about you knowing all the slang? How does he take all that?
Oh, cringe. Total cringe. Yeah, he's like, he just says, just don't. Stop.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
It's
Yeah, he's in ninth grade.
yeah.
So he's actually finally approaching that age where I can ask him for insights. Like somebody messaged me the other day about an app that they were worried about their child downloading, and I hadn't heard of it yet. And so I asked him, "Hey, have you heard of the Rizzle app?" And he was like, "No." So I'm like, "Okay, well, clearly it's not popular yet."
Yeah, exactly. Oh my goodness, that's so funny. Yeah, at least I could see like the daughter would be maybe more cringy. Like my son, who's also ninth grade, I don't think he would, like, very little bothers him. Like, yeah, whatever, Dad. You're embarrassing yourself. I don't care. So he won't care about my intro. All right, so I'm curious. So you do. I said it in the intro. You sit at the intersection of technology and parenting, and I'm curious. Where did all of that begin? You are passionate about it. You're extremely knowledgeable about it. How did you get so passionate? Why are you so passionate? Walk us through some of that history that got you to where you are today.
Sure. Gosh. You know, I grew up and actually wasn't allowed to do a lot of things that my friends and peers were doing. We didn't have cable, and even if and when we did, there were a lot of things I wasn't allowed to watch or listen to or read. Um, so I know what it's like to be sheltered,
Hmm.
but I also know what it's like to enjoy the beauty of reading and just playing outside and being bored, and then combine that with some challenges I've personally endured without a screen helping to make them worse, whether
Yeah.
it's eating disorder related issues as I started to grow, depression, anxiety, suicidal
Hmm.
ideation. I've struggled with all of those things and yet didn't have to deal with the exacerbation of social media and screens compounding it.
Yeah.
And then growing up in a time where we were moving from traditional media to social media and being a young professional in that time, it was really like a glass globe just shattered. And
Hmm.
every little piece of glass became another way to encounter problematic content or problematic people. So used a lot of, I guess, euphemisms there, but it's a perfect storm.
Yeah.
It's being at the right place at the right time and having that unique insight. You and I are the only generation, really, ever in the history of humans living on planet Earth that will understand the before and the after.
Wow.
So,
That's so interesting. And you're right. I mean, just having it came, so I think you and I are right around the same age. So I didn't have my first cell phone till college, probably very late college. And then even that was the dumb phone. And it wasn't until really and maybe you share the same experience. It wasn't really until I probably just about became a dad when I got a phone, which is, terrible timing, right? Just the most important thing that all of a sudden I get the biggest potential distraction I could have in a
oh,
phone, right?
yes, I feel that acutely. Um, Facebook was a major thing while I started my career actually in traditional media at a local radio station in Atlanta. And so that was just crazy, right? Moving from everybody listening in their cars with
Right.
commercial breaks to wait, Pandora and satellite and now iPods. Like it was a crazy time to be trying to sell airtime.
Right.
Um, but yeah, and so I had a BlackBerry, which was already introducing work into my work life unbalance.
Hmm.
That was a
I
whole
like
thing.
that.
But then once my son was born, I remember getting an iPhone within his first year of being on this planet. And yeah, not a great thing in
No.
hindsight. Great for capturing photos and videos. Not
Yeah.
mad at that, but otherwise, no.
Absolutely. You know, it's interesting going back to you talking about your upbringing. I've never been a teenage girl, but I do feel like I just can't imagine. I can't imagine how difficult that is. And I even talk with my daughter, and it's just sometimes just acknowledging to her, it's really hard to be a teenage girl. And I really can't imagine when you start throwing on all the other stuff that compounds it. And maybe some of this stuff is self-evident to Tanya, but I'd love to hear what are some of those things that are really putting a microscope to the difficulty of growing up. Let's just say specifically teenage girls right now. What are they really encountering? Maybe some of the stuff we do know, maybe some of the stuff we don't know.
Wow. Gosh, where to begin? I'll start with the comparison trap. That's actually
Yeah.
the title of a favorite book of mine by Sandra Stanley.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that was already a problem again before social. But if you're growing up and you're seeing everybody's perfect, filtered, beautiful, curated stories and feeds,
Mm.
profile pictures, etc., that can be damaging. If you're basing your self-worth on follows and comments and likes and inclusion in certain private direct message groups, it's hard. If
Mm.
you go home from school and you're in your room but you don't yet really ever leave that social circle, you're at home but you see everybody's at Taylor Swift besides you.
Ugh.
Or you open up Snap and everybody is actually going somewhere for spring break and they're down on the
Mm.
Florida coast, but you're not. You're having a fun staycation.
Right.
Those staycations. It's just constantly being reminded of what you're not, where you're not,
Mm.
um, because everybody's posting the best, the brightest, the filtered, the perfect. There's no acne, there's no cellulite.
Mm.
It's all good lighting. It's too much. On top of that, the pressure, the hypersexualization of young girls. I'm sure our listeners have seen the memes, right, of like a 13-year-old girl in 1980 and a 13-year-old girl today. And this
Goodness.
isn't to shame any 13-year-old girl today. It's just to show how much more grown up they are. They
Yeah.
have seen more and at a more frequent rate and at a much younger age. At 13, I was still playing with Barbies. I had no idea how to use eyeliner,
Mm.
and now there's all these tutorials on YouTube to help you figure all this stuff out. So
Mm.
it is a lot. And compounding on top of that, there's the anxiety, there's the depression, there's the pressure to send nudes, photos and videos because sexting is the new first base. There's a
Wow.
lot of unwanted incoming, inbound, nudes as well, even if you don't want them. There's predation, adults looking to speak to you and utilize you for nefarious purposes in your DMs. And then suicidal ideation.
Mm.
The it's sorry, it's so hard to talk about, but
Yeah.
suicide is the second leading cause of death in children in
Mm.
this nation. That wasn't something we even thought about when we were kids.
Mm. That's hard to believe. And it's the stakes are really high. I mean, and when I go to your Instagram feed and when I look at Bark's resources, there's a level. Your content is awesome. It's lighthearted. It's fun, but there are moments. There's a heaviness about it, and I think an appropriate heaviness about it because of what's at stake. I would like to touch on. I want to touch on what you're doing at Bark. I want to touch on. I want you to talk a little bit about that because the stakes are so high. Bark takes it very seriously and is the leader in protecting kids. Will you talk a little bit about that and what Bark does and how they're combating it, what you all are doing, kind of on the front lines for all families?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So Bark is technology that now helps to protect close to 7 million children
Hmm.
across the globe, primarily in the United States. We're using AI, not in a scary way or an overwhelming way, but we're using, algorithms to analyze and then detect and then alert parents to problematic content and problematic people across their children's text, social media, email, YouTube, etc. So when our algorithm detects a danger, it'll send a parent an alert, text, email, letting them know not only what happened via a small snippet. It's not going to give you everything,
Yeah.
but it'll give you a small snippet, just enough so that you are in the know. And then it'll also give you best recommended next steps for how to address. So that's our core flagship of, what Bark launched with in July of 2015. We've grown over the past few years. We saw a need for our tech in schools after the tragic shooting in Parkland in
Hmm.
2018. So now any school in the United States that wants to use our tech for free absolutely can.
For
And
free.
we're for free. Yeah. And we're in close
Wow.
to 4,000 districts now across the United States. So thankful to be able to help thwart true acts of violence and other issues at school as well. And parents were also coming to us saying, hey, like, we love Bark's monitoring and alerts, but can you also help us with screen time and filtering? And we're like, well, there's other players out there that do that, but if you really want it all in one, sure, we'll do it too. Wasn't that easy or quick, but at the same
Right.
time.
Sure.
And then we also have a device now for in home, because it's one thing to monitor children's smartphones, tablets, social media accounts, email, text, but gaming consoles and smart TVs, like there's a lot to unpack there. So we have Bark Home that will attach to your router in your home to help manage some of the connected tech within your home that you
Wow.
can't connect to the account level. Deep breath. And then finally, almost a year ago, we launched a safer smartphone for kids. Not because more kids need more smartphones.
Hmm.
Um, they certainly do not before they're ready. But we found that so many parents were either giving their children hand me down iPhones or brand new iPhones, which were not safe, or they were giving them, other Android devices that weren't as safe. So we decided, if parents are going to continue to give their kids smartphones that are not safe, let's launch one that is.
Yeah.
So that's what we do.
And the reason I tied in Bark so quickly with the suicide discussion was because of what you're doing. I mean, and I'd like to hear maybe how does that actually work within, let's say, suicidal ideation, for example. How does Bark pick up on? You have the AI, but so it'll pick up on some kind of tone that may be getting close to suicidal ideation. I would love to hear how that happens. Then will you tell us maybe some stories of intersecting there before it was too late, and maybe, I mean, literally, it's no dramatization to say you are saving lives. So I'd love to hear some of that story behind that, some of those stories behind it.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, Unfortunately, there are too many stories to share. But fortunately, we're so thankful to be a part of the solution and
Yeah.
a life saving solution. Um, in fact, at Bark, every single day, we are sending between 85 and 100 severe self harm or suicidal ideation alerts
Every
each day,
day.
every
Wow.
single day. No, we've on multiple occasions had parents write in after the fact, after they've gotten past that initial crisis moment. Thank you so much. This Bark alert helped to save my child's life. I
Hmm.
had no idea that my child was struggling. So many parents that echo that same sentiment. I didn't know. And these are families full of love and well educated, and they'll want to do everything they can for their kids, and sometimes you just don't know because it's buried deep in their digital signal. So,
Hmm.
yes, and there have been too many to count. Um, and I'm so thankful for the brave parents who, after the fact, have reached out and shared how Bark has helped to save their child's life.
And so practically, so for my kids, I have two kids, both of them with iPhones. So that would attach to their iPhone. It would have Bark would be monitoring kind of the content of their text, for example, to see what's in there, and then that would send reports to me. Is that correct?
Yeah, not only that, but let's say they um, have the Google Docs app and they start to write a note,
Hmm.
indicating their plans, or they do a search through Chrome or Safari, trying to learn about different ways to go about
Mm,
executing certain plans. Um, let's say they take a screenshot of something they maybe saw on Instagram that gives them details and that saves to their camera roll. There's so many different rabbit holes and nuanced ways that Bark could get a signal that, hey, something's not right, and then bring it to your attention.
wow. As I get older, the my one of the big fears I have health wise to say like, we would, that one line, I wish we'd have caught it earlier. And you alluded to that. That's the exact same thing when you think of our kids. I mean, what terrible thing, or why, how did I miss that? And part of it goes back to, I know you all talk about this too, is, this whole like, no, not my kid. Like
Yes.
that whole mentality that the not my kid, and that has to be common within parents, right? Just that whole mentality, like, oh, my kids wouldn't look at that, my kid wouldn't think that. Is that something you encounter pretty frequently with parents?
Oh, absolutely. And I felt it myself.
Yeah.
Like, I do this every day for a living. I know what I know. I have had all the awkward, frequent, candid conversations with my son. Like, he's like, please stop. Yet there have still been some things that we've encountered because growing up is hard, middle school is hard,
Mm,
and your kids, as much as they know that you're a safe place, just don't always want to tell you certain things.
yeah.
Nor do they always have the words to describe what's going on. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's just so painful.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Have you ever, I try to tell my kids that I'm the cool parent. They just don't believe me. Do you ever do that? Try to convince your son you're the cool parent?
Not only do I try to convince him of it, I have confirmation that he does understand. He's like, "No, I know
Oh,
that
that's good.
I can talk to you about anything anytime. I know that, mom. I just don't want to." And I'm just like, "Oh,
God.
man.
Oh, that's so good. I love that.
Yes."
Yeah, maybe not. Just yeah, if you what if you don't laugh, you'll cry, right?
You're
Yeah,
right.
but yeah, we just got to keep telling them that we're the cool parents.
Yes.
Is it true? I mean, I read that you all have legitimately. You mentioned it. You said thwarted some stuff, but actual planned school shootings and bombings. That's something you all have intersected as well. Will you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have multiple instances where our alert helped to thwart a credible
Hmm,
threat, school shooting, bomb, etc. Law enforcement has confirmed that there were, guns in book bags or on campus. There were plans written out, and it's chilling. It's absolutely chilling.
hmm. So I was fascinated by this. So parenting in a tech world is really what you do. That's who you are. And then from that, you have a book, and then you have your Facebook group. The Facebook group, I was blown away that you have 390,000 members in
I,
parenting. That's wild, Titania.
I mean, I think we've gained like 5,000 members just over the past 2 weeks. Like, this is a problem.
Yes.
We are not okay. We are struggling. And that's why I created the group, because we need help.
Mm.
We need help.
That's so true, and I love that realization is happening right now. We see it more and more too. Is just that people are saying, because it seems easy. It
Mhm.
seems easy, like, it's just your phone. Oh, you can just put your phone up, or you can just. It's very hard, and I think it's that recognition. I kind of liken it in some ways to the fitness industry when people are just saying, yeah, it's easy to go burn calories. You put on running shoes, you run around your neighborhood, you do some push ups, but it's hard still. It's right. That's a difficult thing to do. So I love what you just said, that people are just saying, finally saying, yeah, we're struggling. This is really, really hard.
Absolutely, because it's so much more than screen time.
Yeah.
When your kid's younger, like birth to age 5, your biggest concern is screen time okay? If so, how much? Is Peppa Pig gonna mess up my kid? Or, like, you know what I mean?
Right.
And it's so much more than that.
Ugh,
So much more than that.
yeah, it
And
is.
the problem is you don't really have that heads up. Your pediatrician's office, bless them, thank God for them, they're not really warning you about what's coming.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you find yourself in it and you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? The best time to plan for a disaster is not when you're in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And it is a disaster, it's a complete disaster.
Is there any way to estimate? Let's think about people in that group, and this is maybe just will be a gut shot from you. How many people are getting ahead of it versus people saying, "Holy crap, I'm too late"? Is it split down the middle? Is it more? Do you see more one on the other side?
I sincerely hope that because of the work that we've been doing over the past 8 years, that there's more and more of a heads up,
Yeah.
because it hit me like a ton of bricks
Mhm.
and I was already in it.
Yeah.
So yes, we are seeing anecdotally more and more parents coming to the group before they've given access. Whereas in the beginning it was help, I gave my kid XYZ. How do I dial it back? What do I do? If they've seen this, they've said this, I don't know what to do.
Yeah. I hope that's true, but and it is. That's the we tell people as you're within Aura, we tell people, what about my kid who's 15, 16s? They're on their screen all the time. He or she's on their screen all the time, and we say there you got to set your goals a little bit smaller. But it's a lot easier when you start young and recognizing this is where I'm encouraged that people, I think, like you're saying, have this self awareness to say, well, it has to begin with me. Like I have to do
Yes.
a good job as a parent and model it well. That's the best way a kid will learn. So for you to say that, I think is encouraging as well. Just knowing people are getting ahead of it. I'll tell you both questions here. One question I have is what are the biggest questions you're hearing within the group? And then the second would be what should be the biggest questions. People are asking one thing. What should they be asking about? And maybe they're I don't know if there's a difference between the two, but I'm sure you hear common themes. But then if you were to say like, yeah, good question, but you really should be thinking about this.
Yeah, well, I just alluded to it really. Most people start out asking how much screen time is
Yeah,
okay. And what they should be asking is, how am I going to regulate the inevitable amount of screen time that my child will receive, even if it's not in the home at all? They're going to, if they're not homeschooled, go to school, go to a friend's house. What happens when there's friends with phones? Do they all go in a basket?
mm,
Do they have sleepovers? What happens with tech? It's just, there are so many questions beyond the how much screen time. Additionally, so many parents are asking, when is the best time to give my child a smartphone? And
yeah.
that's another nuanced question. Then it becomes, my kid really wants Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok. Should I let them? I don't want them to be left out. It's just like waves. They just keep coming.
How would you answer some of those that you just mentioned? Some of those questions that you hear when can my kid have Snapchat? When should they get a phone? How do you address some of those questions where people are looking for black and white in
Yeah,
what's inevitably going to be a shades of gray answer?
totally. So sometimes I like to go back to, if I could go back in time to
Yeah.
when my son was a certain age. And then other times I just go straight out with the, here's what you should do. Because a lot of times parents just want, like, just tell me what to do.
Right.
Don't make me think. And I respect that. So my friend Chris McKenna of Protect Young Eyes says, delay is the way.
Mm,
And I firmly adhere to that. I have never heard a parent say, I waited too long. I really should have let my child have whatever sooner. Never heard that. And I'm open. If somebody wants to tell me that, I'll stop saying it. Haven't heard it yet. Flip side, so many parents, myself included, have said, I just wish I would have waited just a little bit longer.
mm,
So don't hesitate to delay. Encourage your children's friends' parents to be in it with you, because they're going to want to do what their friends are doing. And if you all kind of decide together, hey, as a community, we are not going to let our kids have X, Y, or Z until this age, this grade, excellent choice.
yeah.
If a child wants any social media platform before the age of 13, feel free to lean on the law. Like, their terms of service say you have to be 13 to use this.
Huh.
So that's what we're going to do.
I like that.
Yeah,
And then after that, you just move to Montana, right? Because then kids can't. Yeah,
exactly.
they can't have.
Exactly. Yeah, get a yurt, no Wi-Fi, and invite me, because that sounds kind of fun for a day.
Right.
Yeah. And then for the smartphone question, before Bark had a smartphone, I had one answer, which was just wait, please wait, please, 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 please wait. We launched our smartphone because kids are going to keep getting them, and they need to be safe. Right? Some kids in dual households or with health issues or whatever need that access that perhaps a smartwatch
Yeah.
won't cut it. So, um, if and when you do decide your child has needs that are best met by a smartphone, make sure that you go with the safest option.
Yeah.
Obviously, I feel that Bark is that option. But whatever you go with, just make sure it's not full unfettered access to the internet with
Yeah.
no screen time parameters in place. You know, determine what your kid needs to do before you determine what device you're going to give them. Do they just need to be able to text mom and dad? Do you need location tracking? Do they need the ability to download, 5 apps from school? Like, what do they need? And then
Mm.
work backwards to the minimum viable product that they need to accomplish that purpose.
What a great way to look at it. Just even beginning with the natural current is they're such and such age, they get a phone now, or all their friends are getting a phone. Which, by the way, it's such like a great parent trick to band together, because then it's I'm the last one. Nope, nope.
Nope.
I know that because I got 7 other parents with me. Right. It's such a good one. But
Yeah.
then also I like how you said that, beginning with the need. What's the purpose here? Why are we doing this? That's a
Yeah.
really good way. And I don't know that I don't know that I've ever heard anybody put it in that way, but it's so logical. It makes such perfect sense, which shows that we're flowing with a current right now without really stopping and standing in the middle of the river while the water's rushing around us, saying, do I really want to go downstream right now?
100%. An example of that, mom I was speaking to recently said her daughter all summer long was begging for a smartphone. And she finally said, well, what is it? What's the one thing that you really want to do on this? And she's like, I really want to listen to music. And she was like, cool. Got her an MP3 player, hasn't asked for a smartphone since. Like,
Yeah,
so there you go.
that's brilliant. Yeah, exactly. Just beginning and not assuming too much, and just and being, again, it's just being more intentional with it. um I- I'm curious about the I don't know if this question will fully make sense, but and there are a lot of shocking stats out there. The suicidal, all that stuff, the child predators. So would you say that parents should be fearful? Is fearfulness an appropriate response to the all of the stuff that's out there when it comes to technology and kids?
It's a great question. Um, I would say if you put your child in a car without a seatbelt, are you fearful?
Oh, that's good.
Do you let them ride a bike without a helmet?
Mm.
I think there is a healthy level of fear and a crippling level of fear. Um, so you should have a healthy fear of real, present, tangible dangers. But what you don't need to do is be afraid of things that are unlikely to happen.
That's a good answer, Titania. That was. I mean, that was strong. I was trying to bust you there for a second. No, that's a very that's a great answer, and it's a perfect. Yeah, yes, you should be afraid of your kid playing in the middle of the highway. Yep, that's
Yep.
appropriate. But yeah,
Yep.
exactly. No, I love that. It's very, very, very good. The book Parenting in a Tech World. My impression of this book was, we know all this stuff. Let's get it into something almost like as a starter kit.
Yes.
Was that the original intention for the book?
Yes, it was. I mean, there's so many reasons for the book. One of which is, I started this group on Facebook, but I don't own it. Facebook owns it. At
Right.
any time, all of this amazing knowledge
Hmm.
could just go away. So let's start documenting this. Let's get this into a tangible thing that we own, that we can curate, that we can update. And so, sometimes parents like to not be on a digital device and like an actual paper copy of a thing. So,
Yeah.
and also there wasn't a book like that. Like there are a lot of different super scientific books that dug into super scientific specific aspects of dopamine and neurons and screen time and that sort of thing. But just in general, like, there's books that help you with breastfeeding, bottle feeding, first steps, teaching kids how to read. But there wasn't anything out there that was like, how do I be a good parent in a tech world? Or just
Right.
like a decent parent in a tech world.
Yeah, not terrible parent. Right.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. You in the intro to the book, you list some kind of common questions. These are the questions kind of floating around, and there were a couple that jumped out to me. One of them was kind of spotting signs of trouble in your
Mhm.
kid when it comes to social media, or maybe if something's just a little bit off. What
Yeah.
what are some ways that you advise parents on that? And
Mhm.
by the way, I do think you have to be hyper vigilant on this, um, and just looking for like small, maybe nearly indetectable changes. What do you advise parents for that?
Gosh, this hits so close to home. Because I've been there.
Mhm.
Just the slightest change in let's say sleep, sleeping too much, or not getting enough sleep,
Mm,
grades dropping. All of a sudden, your children are not hanging out with the same people they used to. Yes, friends change, interests change, but if there's kind of a more of a drastic, like, they're not hanging out anymore.
mm,
Wonder what's going on there. If your child seems agitated or angry, or just seems things seem a little darker, if they're shutting their door, locking their
mm.
door, if they do have a device, if when it buzzes or dings, they seem agitated, they turn it over. If you come around, they're kind of
Right.
making sure you're not looking at the
Yeah.
screen. God bless kids. Um, uh, just anything that
Mm,
seems off. Um,
yeah.
dig into that. And a lot of times they will say, everything's fine, there's nothing wrong.
Mm,
And don't hesitate if you're worried. To schedule a pediatrician appointment or talk to your child's school counselor, or if they have a therapist or a psychiatrist. Again, sometimes kids don't want to talk to you, but
yeah.
there are other people that they might open up to, and that's
Yeah.
important.
And I think this is where goes back to us, our responsibility as parents, and how easy it is for us to become distracted by our own phones. I propose, and I know this just from firsthand experience. It's impossible for me to notice those small changes if I'm distracted myself. It is very, very hard to pay attention when we constantly are distracted by our phones, if we're checking emails or if we're on fantasy football, or good or bad things. But as we as parents are on our screens a bunch, and we're all guilty of it, so there's no shame there,
Yeah.
that we need to recognize. I think what you're saying here is our um, responsibility, but also opportunity. What a cool opportunity for us to be kind of like detectives when it comes to our kids, always looking for things. But it does require us to be present and not be distracted by our own technology.
100%. Yeah, I just want to reiterate that if you feel the slightest hint of something's off,
Hmm.
lean into it. Lean into it, because it's so easy to dismiss. Um, and you don't want to live with that regret. I also want to highlight just how buried things can be, meaning if children are spending upwards of 8 hours a day now on devices and in front of a screen, etc., that's 8 hours of childhood that used to be
Hmm.
spent outside with peers, with parents around that could observe conversations and arguments and nuances and fights. And, there's just everything is just so much more buried and hidden, and disappearing photos and messages and vault apps and camera rolls that have hidden albums. And it is harder for a parent to keep their child safe physically and mentally today
Hmm.
because of these devices.
It's so true. It really is. In some ways, I was reading a book. I don't know if you know who Jenny Urich is. She has the Thousand Hours Outside podcast, but she has a new book coming out that's great. And she has a line in there basically that today we're protecting our kids physically like never before. Like when you and I were kids, we run out on bikes, but we're not protecting them emotionally at all. Like we're just handing them, hey, here's the internet. And if I had the internet at 14, Titania, I would have never slept. I literally would have never slept. And so we're doing this thing that's just so counterintuitive, that we're overprotecting them physically, but underprotecting them in more emotional ways that are maybe even more damaging potentially.
Yes, that.
Yeah. It,
Like, put that on a quote, pop that on social. That is, yes.
I want to ask you about a sensitive topic, but I think that it's probably one that we all turn a blind eye to, and that is kids. And I didn't plan on asking this question. I'm just curious your thought on it. Kids exposure to pornography. Um, will you tell us a little bit about, is it prevalent? Is it more alarmist? Like what's actually happening? Tell us the real story on what's happening with kids' exposure to pornography.
Absolutely. So I'm glad you brought that up. Every year at Bark, we run a report. And over 2022, we analyzed more than 4.5 billion data points
Wow.
across text, email, YouTube, apps, social media, all of that. And what we found, just in regards to sexual content, is that 62% of tweens, that's kids 8 to 12, and 82% of teens encountered nudity or content of a sexual nature.
Hmm.
So that's the rate at which children are encountering that sort of content. It's really not a matter of if, but when your child is going to stumble across something. Could be mild,
Yeah.
could be mild. I hope it is. But based on what we know, today's pornography and sexual content is not what we grew up with. This is not some magazine. This is not a still photo.
Yeah.
This is so much more, and it's damaging, and it's outside of your beliefs around sex and sexuality and age appropriate sexual curiosity. Um, just the consumption of this sort of media, what it does to your brain, the pleasure center, the addiction center of your brain, and then how it can affect your long term relationships when it is time for you to have a healthy sexual relationship with somebody. Um, Again, long term ramifications. So, not to just all give you doom and gloom, there's
Yeah.
also hope. I highly recommend the book Good Pictures, Bad Pictures.
Mm.
Get that book. It's on Amazon. A wonderful, wonderful book, and read it with your child. And in fact, they have a book, Good Pictures, Bad Pictures Junior, for even younger kids, because you could maybe just need to grab a quick shower or work call, hand your kid an iPad that is not protected, and they stumble across something somewhere that they can't unsee and they don't understand.
Mm.
So
Would you say that this is or where would you rank this in terms of parents' naivete when it comes to, oh, my kid wouldn't look at pornography? Like, is it very high on the list of a not my kid syndrome?
yes, absolutely, absolutely, um, absolutely. I just, oh gosh, I can't emphasize that enough, because it's not just, the obvious website that people know about. It's subtle, subtle ways that children can encounter it without even looking for it.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
parents realize.
That is a good way. That is a good. That's a good way to put it. In some ways, it's like if you're oversensitive to this, then you just suspect like your kids are out there just searching for porn as hard as they can, which is probably not the case. So the more likely scenario, what you're saying here is just they are going to stumble upon it. Like that is going to happen, and they probably don't want to, and they're probably embarrassed. They're a little bit ashamed, so they won't bring it up to you. And so this is where you start that dialogue early and make sure they know and they have a safe place. And I think it begins, Titania, as I was this whole a quote in as you guys were talking about the book. You said you don't have to keep up with technology. You said when your relationship with your kids is solid, then technology won't be your biggest problem. I love that line.
Yeah.
Will you expand on that a little bit about yes, it's all technology. Yeah, things are changing, but really this comes down to relationships.
It does come down to relationships. I want to bring up one more example from the
Yeah,
previous topic before I get into that,
sure.
which is just before you know it, before you're ready, you will no longer be the expert that your child comes to answer the questions,
Hmm.
and Google or TikTok will be their new source of truth. And what you don't want to do is have an innocent search like, when will my boobs start growing?
Hmm.
Or what happens when my voice changes? Or just anything that is totally appropriate to want to know more about, but might be awkward for them to bring up to you in their minds. They're going to turn to less awkward ways to find out that information, and that's again a part of the danger that can come
Hmm.
up of, it's not just organic search that has been vetted. There are paid advertisements, there's
Hmm.
spam, there's algorithms that all of a sudden see, oh, you want to see content about sex and sexuality and puberty and whatever, how about this and this, all
Ugh.
the recommended things. Like it really is a rabbit hole. So
Hmm.
deep breaths, pause there, go to the relationship. But actually, it's a segue,
Yeah.
because if your children know that they can come to you, that you are a safe place, that you will navigate it together, it's a much better position to be in. A few other things, birth to age 20 is a different relationship than like 21 to 80,
Yeah.
hopefully. Um, Later is longer. Hopefully, you can be your child's friend for a very, very long time. But in the beginning, they do need to know that you're their source of guidance and protection, and it's because you love them, not because you are power hungry.
Yeah, right.
Control freak. um Not only that, but this isn't a you versus them dynamic. It's a we're in this together. So child, you want Minecraft? Okay, let's do some research together. Let's Google like the pros and cons, the dangers, the fun things. What can you do on it? What should you avoid on it? And much like your child, whenever they start to embark on any journey, will be experiencing it for the first time. You, as the adult and parent, can do it with them. It's almost like you get to be a kid again. You
Hmm.
get to explore with them. You guys can learn Minecraft or Roblox or whatever together, but then you use your adult wisdom and lens to guide them on here's the parts we'll stay away from, and here's the parts we will lean into.
And I love the question you recommend, which is just asking your child, "Hey, can you teach me how? Will you teach me how Roblox?" Or, "Hey, will you teach me how?" What a great question,
Yes.
because they
Yeah,
love
and
to
it's
explain it.
yeah, and it's time you get to spend together doing what they want.
Yeah, that's right. I love that. Um, I'm going to go back to what you went back to,
Yeah.
which on the, this whole, to your point, yeah, I just imagine, and I mean, Titania, it's heartbreaking when you think about a girl going through puberty who goes to the internet for answers and is exposed to something that they didn't want to be exposed to. It, and then and having some innocence taken from them in that moment. So
Or
I don't even,
thinking that that's the norm or that's what's
mm.
expected.
And then, and I don't know exactly even how to ask that question. This question is that you're on the front lines here, and you probably see some heartbreaking things in terms of suicidal ideation, in terms of young kids being exposed to things that no one should, frankly, be exposed to. How do you balance out that heaviness that you probably come across? The the war that Bark is in for our kids. How do you how do you how do you internalize that? How do you soak that in? Does that question make sense?
It does. So, to the first part of the question, I actually don't see it firsthand
Hmm.
because, um, child privacy and safety
Yeah,
laws,
got it.
like nobody at Bark wants to or needs to see very much, right? Because
Yep.
it's our algorithm that's doing that hard, heavy lifting for us.
Got it. Love
What
that.
I do, I would say see, it's more like what I do hear, what I do read is
Mm,
that feedback from parents. Like Bark sent me this alert. Then they tell me what happened. Then I know about it. And then of course it weighs heavily on my heart. Um, and it's hard, but it's nothing compared, I would say, to the first responders.
yeah.
My heart goes out to the people who are showing up when certain things have taken place,
Mm,
or when they have to rescue a child from a terrible situation, or deal with the aftermath, the rehabilitation, the therapy. We are just a small but important part, and I'm proud to
yeah.
be a part of it.
Yeah.
It's an important mission. So then it comes back to balance, right? Like I can only take so much, and
Right.
then I need to love on my dog. If
Mm.
my kid will spend time with me, I'll take it. Exercise, paint, sleep,
Mm.
whatever.
Yeah. That's awesome. So two questions to close out, and the first one is what's the you're in this. We've talked a bunch about it. What Bark's doing, what you're doing, what your personal passion is behind this. What would you say this is the world you'd like to create? What are you aiming towards here?
Whew, it's a good question. I would love, 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 love for Apple to give parents the ability to opt in to keeping their kids safer online.
Mm,
Right now, it's kind of like my way or the highway with them. They offer what they offer and it has bugs. And if you want to use anything else, it's cumbersome and clunky. And kids are in trouble because of it. Kids are struggling, kids are dying. It's not
mm,
okay. Not only Apple, but the biggest platforms, Snapchat, TikTok, etc. Right now, they're releasing every few months a new feature that they tout as being safe and better for kids and families. They have their own parental controls, but they're bogus. They're bogus.
Yeah.
They're not really moving the needle. And so my hope is that whether it's Apple or Snap or TikTok or anybody that has a huge mass of children consuming their device or content in any way, shape, or form, that they actually do the right thing and work with companies and
Mm,
entities, companies like Bark, but also law enforcement and therapists and that sort of thing, to make it safer for the kid up front versus just letting the kid have access to everything and putting the onus on the parent to try to dial it back and block the thing. And I'm rambling now, but it's essentially a world
yeah.
where kids can utilize the positive aspects of tech without
Mm,
being so negatively impacted by the negative aspects of tech.
yeah.
It's a possible thing. It can happen.
Yeah, well, you're not describing, the far-fetched, world that's so ethereal. It's just something that they have in their control. They can absolutely do it. And what I love about that answer too is that actually probably, if that world existed, it would probably negatively impact Bark's business model to some degree. But the reason I love it is because you're just saying, no, we just want to help kids. Like, let's just help kids, and we'll figure out all the rest. Let's not
Yeah.
worry about a revenue model. Let's just help kids.
Let's empower parents. Let's educate parents. Let's protect kids.
Yeah.
Because right now, parents are struggling and kids are struggling.
Mm.
Not good.
Yeah, it's not good. So the last thing, what is everybody listening today? What's the baseline thing? Let's just one thing. If you're going to do one thing today as a parent, what's the very baseline thing you should do when it comes to your family and technology?
Do not let your children have unfettered, unmonitored access to connected tech. Please use something.
Hmm.
Please take a minute to Google parental controls and whatever your kid spends the most time on, whether it's an Xbox, an iPad, YouTube, whatever, and just figure out one step that you can take today to limit the time, set some filters, set some restrictions. Just take a little baby step towards
Yeah,
a safer internet for them and a healthier balance with screens versus non-screens.
so good. Good way to do that is looking into Bark. Where can people find you, find Bark? What's the best way for people to learn more?
Well, luckily, I think everybody knows how to spell bark. So you just go to bark, but then you go to .us, not .com, not .org. It's bark.us. That's our site. We have so many free resources there,
Yeah.
whether you sign up for the service or by the phone or not. So yeah, bark.us.
And follow you. Is it at Titania Jordan?
Yes, yeah, I am cranking out those reels.
You are. I'll tell you, your Steve Jobs reel. That's worth an Instagram visit. That was very strong. That was very good. That was very good. Everybody say that's a teaser. We call it a teaser in the biz. People are gonna have to go check that out because it was awesome.
Thank you.
So Tanya, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for your passion behind it, your heart behind it, and the work on the front lines. Literally, I'll say it again. Literally saving lives. And I hope people listen to this a few times to soak in what you said. There's a lot in here that we should all apply and just begin to wrap our minds around. So thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for what you're doing and your team. And thank you for having me.
All right. Appreciate it, Titania. Thanks so much.